Here we go.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's Writers Chat. This is where we like to gather as writers in our wonderful community here, and we support each other to learn and grow. And this is for writers and by writers. And I think that's the secret of the strength here. And we've got a great program here today. And just thank you for all attending, and those of you that have watched it on the replay, those of you that are here live in the chat. We just welcome you all into our community. I'm going to turn it over to Johnnie to tell us what we're going to talk about today and start our program out. Johnnie, take it away.
Well, I'm really glad to be here today. Melissa Stroh and I are going to be talking about research for fiction writers. So just sharing some different tips about, where to find information that you need. I think over the last 2 months or so, I made a really quick list, and this is not at all comprehensive. I do a monthly blog post for heroes, heroines, and history, and I've been writing about art thefts. So I've been researching art thefts every month, which has been really fun to see how different thieves break into galleries and even private homes and steal works of art, and a lot of it has never been recovered. So that's kind of fascinating. I've done research on glass blowing and pottery and on ranch life, including poisons, thanks to Melissa and her husband, sheriff qualifications and DUI laws. I have researched real life settings, a town called Gnawbone, Indiana, a town called Crooksville, Ohio, Mackinac Island in Michigan, Sullivan's Island in South Carolina. I have looked up Scottish nobility. How do they get their titles? How long do they last? How far back do they go in history, words and sayings? Recipes for traditional Scottish foods and for desserts for a whole different book. Copyright protections for knitting patterns and similar crafts, and rock hounding in South Carolina, and where to find a megalodon tooth. And that is, again, just a short thing of all the different things as a novelist I have been able to look up. So it's just so much fun that you get to explore all this stuff, Well, I don't know. It's just fun. It's fun for me. I love Trivial Pursuit and all that kind of stuff. And it's just, Jeannie said I'm developing an expert at being a thief. That, if I wasn't a Christian, this is so horrible to say, I would love to be a grifter. That's like my secret.
Your secret vice, huh? Don't you wonder sometimes you look some of these strange things up, and that's when the FBI arrives at your doors? I like that. I think there's a T-shirt says.
I love those movies, like Leverage. I love that show and all those where they have those people coming together. Long cons and stuff. I'm fascinated by it. Thanks, Jeff. Which I don't know whether that's a compliment or not. Said she thinks I'm great at it. Anyway, so those are just a few of the things that I've been able to do. But I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen. And this is a handout. It is on or in the Writers Chat Facebook group. So if you want to get it, you can get it there. One of the first things to start out with is characters need names. And I don't know about the rest of you, but when I'm writing a novel, I may know where they live because sometimes that's given to me in the stories that I write. I may know or have a pretty good idea what occupation I want them to have. But until they get a name, they really don't come alive and they don't take on those characteristics. So it can be a lot of fun searching out just the right name. And I will tell you, sometimes those names just come and they are just like, I don't even know where they come from. It's just like, I know that that's that character's name. But other times I have to go searching. And one of the places that I go to often is this link at the Social Security Administration office, which has a baby names list of the most popular names by decade, going back, I don't even know how far, late 1800s. So this is different. You can view the popularity. If you go to this website and scroll down, you can see these different icons. The one I go to is the decades, because I do write historicals. So I think about, when my character would be born, and I go back and look at those names. And sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes I go a decade or two back, to find that right name. Also, some of those names work for surnames, but there are a lot of places to get baby names. You can look up things like Scottish names beginning with P, because you don't want all your names to begin with the same letter. So you may have, certain letters you want to go with. So this is a great place to start. And then again, you can just do a Google search. Businesses, pets, places, and more, they need names too. Now, I've not used this name generator before, but I've used one similar to it. And I don't think I've ever used the name that has come up, but I've used like maybe the first name for one, and then I'll generate more names and I'll use the surname for another. But it does give you some ideas of names that aren't so common if you want a really different kind of name for your character. I have also looked up to draw inspiration from. Again, I don't think I've actually used the names that come up, but I switch them up or change the words a little bit. For the ranch that I've got going on in a book coming up that Melissa and her husband helped me with. For businesses, if you're having a coffee shop and you want a different kind of name, there are name generators out there besides this one. There are so many, and you can just get inspiration from them, even if you don't use the name that they pop up for you. So just for fun, though, this has a food truck name generator. And so these were the first 5 that came up. And, you could use any one of these, or you might, again, just instead of saying Southside Pizza House, maybe you would do Northside Pizza House, or, that's a very, very simple switch. But it would have brought up even more names. Like you could choose 5, 10, and even more. So you can just redo it if none of these suited what you were looking for. So for general research, people, places, occupations, hobbies, and everything else, a good place to start is Wikipedia. And you do have to be a little careful what's there, because we know it gets edited by just about anybody who wants to do an edit, but it can be a great starting point because it'll give you an overview of the topic. So just as an example, many of you know that I wrote a novel about a year ago called The Cryptographer's Dilemma, about a woman named Beverly Dickinson. She was a real life person. She was known by the FBI as the Doll Woman, who was the only woman that we know of that sold secrets American woman who sold secrets to the enemy during World War II. So what's cool about this, though, is there's this article about Beverly, and then there's, it's just, again, this overview of information. But down at the bottom, there are references, and you can go to these for your original sources. So don't just depend on the Wikipedia article. Make use of those footnotes and go to where they go. And then you're going to see what information is there. And I found there's a woman who's written a book about her. I depended a lot on that book for Beverly's timeline for her history. But what I found was, as I was doing internet searches, I started seeing the same information over and over again. And that's when you know that, okay, you've pretty much covered this. You've got what there is. I also found information that contradicted one another. And so then you have to just use your best judgment. But if it was on the FBI website, that sort of had more credibility than, a newspaper article. So it gives you a chance to sort of judge your sources and to look at them. So go to Wikipedia, get that overview, but then, look at all those, whatever references are there. Now, these are things y'all probably know, but it's maybe nice just to have them in one place. Again, YouTube. You can find so much on YouTube. It's beneficial for overviews. Here are some things that I have looked up recently. Why did so many German officers flee to Argentina? The life of a real Montana rancher. Journey, Indiana, at home in the hills, the Brown County Art Guild. So all of those are videos that I watched for one reason or another. Also for how to. So you want to be a glass blower. Sculpting basics. Portrait bust armature making. How to choose pottery clay. Beginner's guide. So, it's more than just looking up how to build a website, how to do all the social media stuff that we often send you guys to YouTube for. It's great for all these other reasons too. You can find just so much there. You probably could spend a whole day just going from one thing to another thing to another thing, which can be kind of fun unless you're on a deadline. tips: utilize your watch later option. If you don't have time to do it right then, there is a watch later, and you just add that. If you have an account, it'll just save all those for you. You can also create playlists and save videos to the relevant playlist, and that way you've got it more organized. Reality shows may inspire occupations or hobbies. So there are competition series. I don't know if you're familiar with these. You're probably familiar with the cooking ones, like, Master Chef and all those kinds of things. But there's also one called Blown Away, which, guess what? It's all about glass blowing. And it was fascinating to watch. I think there are 2 or 3 seasons out now, to watch that and to actually see people doing what I had been reading about, and see the problems that they had and how difficult it could be and the different things they created, and how that was just even just seeing the creations they made inspired me as my character was deciding what she was going to make and what I was going to have her make as this masterpiece in the story I've written about her. Forged in Fire is all about knife making. I love that show. I don't know why, but I do. I just absolutely love it. Making the Cut is about fashion design. Flea Market Flip, that's an old one. I don't know whether you can even find it anymore, but there's stuff about all kinds of things. Then there are the non-competition series about gardening and landscaping, living in a tiny house, the travel shows, the home renovation. So, you might just be able to find something on a reality show and just listen to the little tips that come out that you might not have picked up watching a YouTube video or reading about it, just because you're seeing these artists actually doing the work and you're getting to hear their hearts. And that can just be very helpful, I think, in developing a character. Friends and strangers, talk to those who are in the know. I've already mentioned a couple times that Melissa and her husband were so kind just to talk to me about their day. And my story takes place in September. So they were telling me, now they're in Wyoming, but and my story takes place in Montana, but I went just north over the line so that the geography and the climate would be very similar to what Melissa and Matt were telling me. And so they were telling me, what do they do in September? What are ranchers doing? Well, they told me, and I needed a poisonous plant. And Matt came up with one just like that. He knew exactly what plant would be great, that would be harmful to animals and to people, which was more important for my story. When I had a book where there was a barn fire and horses got trapped in it, it was horrible. I actually had a firefighter read over the story and then kind of tell me what he would have said in different situations. Not like he didn't read the whole story. He just read that section, what he would say, which meant that gave an authenticity to that scene, because he was telling me, yes, this is how we would react, how we would respond, what I'd be saying in this instance, how I'd be responding to these people that are there trying to get these horses out. And I talk to my sister about baking and cooking all the time, because of those of you who know me for any length of time know I do not bake and I do not cook. I am not good at either one of those skills. My sister, fortunately, is. For some reason, I end up writing a lot of books, stories that have bakers and cooks in them, but there's always food, right? No matter what story you write, there's always food. And so she, bless her heart, is just so wonderful about helping me with doing that, even so far as testing out recipes. So I just wrote a novella for Guidepost, and I had to include a recipe. So I looked up Scottish traditional recipes, because there's a Scotch family in this story. And we found this old recipe, and my sister actually baked it. It was a cake, a marmalade cake, because the ingredients were like in, I don't know, like metrics or whatever. But she did it, and she baked it and tested it and told me, okay, the baking time's all wrong. This is what you need to do. I had to add a little bit of this to make it work. And so now the recipe will work for other people, whether instead of using the one. And of course, you've got to be careful about copyright too. So we did want to make some changes just so I would be safe as far as I don't know what the cookbook copyright laws are. They seem to be a little nebulous. I've looked them up different times, and it's not real clear. Ask Facebook followers. This is a great thing to do. I have often in my writing career just put up on Facebook, let's pretend, and then I give a scenario and have people respond. And it's just wonderful, the responses you can get. or what if. And one of my what ifs was, what if you're, late 20s, you just had this horrible breakup with the guy that you thought you were going to marry. What kind of ice cream do you grab and eat the whole carton of? And just got wonderful ideas of what flavor to use, so that was pretty great. They've named animals, horses and dogs before. I asked the question, does anyone know what antique linen looks like, for a short story I was doing? Got great things there. I've said, Ohio friends, what flowers are blooming this time of year? And you've got people then that, will tell you that. And I actually now, I grew up in Ohio, so, I do set books sometimes in Ohio. And I now have developed a relationship with one particular person who can always tell me what's blooming any time of year in Ohio. So that is just really great to develop those things. There are organizations, associations, government agencies that you can check online info. You can find contact info. I've done this with Master Gardeners. I've done this. The FBI has a great website about the history of their field offices, which was so helpful to me in the cryptographer's dilemma, because my characters were traveling from one field office to the next, and I was able to describe the outside of the building, even give the address sometimes. The Art Loss Registry is a great resource. So you can find your own, whatever you're researching. There's probably 90% chance that there's some organization or association or government agency dealing with that topic. Whew. Let's not forget good old-fashioned books. Go to the library, see what's on the shelf, see what's there. I know we no longer have the old-fashioned card catalogs, and some of you may be too young to even remember them, but I used to love when I'd go to the library. I just flipped through the card catalog and see what I came up with. That was before I was even writing. It was just fun, and I would read some really interesting books that way. Of course, bookstores, retail, new and used, online specialty bookstores. And then an often maybe overlooked resource for books that might be hard to find is eBay. So I mentioned I am now looking up information on a little town called Crooksville, Ohio, which is in Perry County. I went on eBay, put Perry County, Ohio in the search engine, and found a book that someone had written, indie published, but it's all about Perry County, Ohio. Just a bunch of little essays he's written about his home county. And it wasn't very much, it was less than $10. So I bought it. And it's just been a really interesting glimpse into the people that lived there, like 20, 30 years ago, or probably further back than that, actually, a long time ago. So that's a good resource that you might not even think about. You can find a book of just about any county, I think, there. It's pretty amazing. Okay, websites. Of course, there's tons of websites out there, but these are ones that I have found that I sometimes need to know things about. Weather. What is the weather like in this particular place at this particular time? Now, you don't have to do all the South Carolina, USA, Charleston for this. That was just for the example. But if you go to weatheratlas.com, you can bring up other countries. You can bring up anywhere in the United States. And it will give you the weather, and you may need to know that. Sunrise and sunsets. This is a website that will help you do that. There are others too. If you want to sort of know, okay, about what time is the sun going to be setting? I've got the characters sitting outside. Where is the sun in relation to them? Are they seeing the sunset, or is it the wrong time of year? Does it need to be later at night, or the sunrise? So these are things I probably, for almost every book I write, at one time or another, I look up one of these things, either the weather, the sunrise, the sunset, the moon phases. This one, not so much, but it can be very helpful. The USDA plant hardiness zone map, again, because I'm not a gardener, I need to know, because let's just back up a little bit. Setting is so important. And I've talked about sense of place before, and so I'm not going to get real deep into it here. But sense of place means, what is the weather like? What is the geography like? What is the climate like? What is the food that is grown there? What plants grow there? So those are things you need to know to give your setting in your novel just that sense of authenticity and in reality, and set these people, your characters, in a very real place, even if it's a town that you're making up. So these are just very, very helpful in helping you do that when you're writing about a place that you don't know about, or that you're not from there. And then just really quick, to organize this research, what I do is I use Evernote. Of course, people also use 3-ring binders. They use disc-bound notebooks like the Happy Planner, because you can make your own. Bethany's talked about doing Frankenstein things, Franken planners, do folders. Evernote's really helpful to me because you can do these notebooks. So I do a notebook for, I write a lot for Annie. So I've got Annie's, and then the abbreviation of each book. So I've got, I don't know how many Annie's notebooks, and then I can just stick all the stuff that I find out. Then you make, in a notebook, you make notes, and I can put in there, and I put things there about the weather and the food, and I put images. When I was writing about a baker involved in a baking competition with desserts, I put images of the desserts that I was going to have her make, because again, I'm not a baker, but I would put them there, and I would put like links to the recipes and all this stuff. So Evernote is so helpful just to be able to go back to, and I can find exactly what I need, because I create these stories, and I might not write them for 6 months later. So, I need to go back to remember what all I had already done, the research I've already done. So that's all I'm going to talk about. I don't know. I wasn't monitoring the chat if anybody had any questions.
There wasn't a lot of questions, but a lot of good sharing. So this is, excuse me, definitely a chat we want copied and put as a resource.
Well, great. All right. Well, Melissa's got a lot to share too, and I wanted to give her as much time as possible. So I'm going to hand it over to her.
All right. Yeah, I was scrolling through seeing if I could see any questions either, but lots of good comments in the chat. So Johnnie kind of covered some of the basics of where I was going to start. We'll see if people were paying attention. What are the most important basics to cover when you're researching your novel? What can anybody chime out or put in the chat? What are the main elements you need to be researching for your novel? Or any of the co-hosts they can chime in too.
Oh, clothing. That was a good one. I didn't cover that at all.
That's a little too detailed. I'm thinking more broad fiction elements. What are we looking for? The setting. There we go. There's one. What else? There's 4 of them. Characters and setting. There's 2.
Oh, like believable characters.
Yeah.
Are you thinking?
Yep. And the next one actually kind of fits under plot, but I go subplots.
Oh,
because I think that they can be kind of take us off. So those are the ones that I've kind of focused on. Everything falls under those, I think. So we need to research our setting, our characters, our plots, and our subplots. Or you could just make it characters, setting, and plot. Those are the basics that you need to cover, and you need to know them well, because all of these things come together to create the story world that your story, your characters, everything inhabit, and it has to be believable to draw in your readers. All of these things come from your imagination, yes, but you can't rely on your imagination alone. Each element of your story, setting, characters, plot, and subplot, must be researched. And to learn, you need to learn to question everything, even the stuff that you think you know all the facts about, and stop and assess it. Really see, are there gaps that you maybe didn't notice that a reader could get hung up on? So even if you think that you are experienced enough to address an issue, honestly look at it from outside. Think reader first. Would my reader know about this, or would they get confused? So with that in mind, come to my next point. World building is essential. No matter what your genre, world building is essential to your stories. They need to be true. Your characters need to be true to your world. Your plot needs to be true to your world. Your subplots, everything needs to fit into the realm, your setting, all in the realm of your story world. And so that brings me to 2 things that are probably the most important in doing that: accuracy and authenticity. I want you guys to guess which one is more important. They're both important, but which one is more important, accuracy or authenticity?
I would say authenticity.
Bingo. Yep. Because it needs to be believable even if the element is absolute fiction. Sometimes accuracy can lend to giving a sense of authenticity, but maybe you write science fiction or you write fantasy. Maybe you're doing something that is absolutely polar opposite of what is reality. Like maybe you're in your story world, gravity is the opposite and everybody floats. So, you know, that's not scientific, that's not fact, but you need to make it real because that's real in the realm of your story. Now you still have to research gravity, obviously, because you got to know what's the opposite of gravity, right? You have to understand the basics of facts. So you need to throw in a little accuracy in order to make things authentic, but that fact is still fictional. Okay, so bearing all of that in mind, where do we start with the research? Well, I am a firm believer in the broadcast net effect that you go with from the beginning, and go with the basics of whatever it is that you are needing to know, like, and that's genre specific too. So like for me, historical fiction, I usually would start in the actual setting, the place, the time. So then I need a broad understanding of it. For my novels, I needed to know about ancient Ireland. So I started looking for books on the broad topic of just Irish history, and then kind of narrowed down into my chosen time period. There's a scene. I thought I saw a question in the comments. No, just good comments going on. Anyway, so I thought Johnny's suggestion about Wikipedia is good. Definitely be cautious there, but she kind of honed in on what I was going to focus on only from the book side of things, and it's that bibliography down on the bottom. That's your best resource, and you can find that in books too. Obviously, go to the back of the books that you're reading, and they have usually some pretty good sized bibliographies that you can go and see where the author sourced their information from, and then you can expand on the research that you discover in the books or original sources that you've found. I'm a big advocate of actually starting with the books that you can find them online, and I definitely am not, we'll get to internet in a bit, but I think especially if you're doing like historical fiction or things like that, to seek out the established sources and authorities on those matters in books, and research from there, and then expand to the internet and people who have posted things there, because you know everybody can kind of post things on the internet and you never know what actually is accurate. So yeah, always check your sources. Then I think that it's important to make a timeline to keep track of the major events in your story. Whether you write historical fiction, science fiction, romance, create a timeline from the story or the series is beginning all the way to the end, and keep track of all those important events. And then you have something to look back on when your memory is a little faulty, which I have experienced that more often than not. So I am very dependent upon my special timelines. And I have, let's see here, I have given you one of those. Now, let's see here. I might be getting ahead of myself. I was going to talk about resources, but we'll jump to the timeline and go back to resources. Let me share my screen. I can find it. Okay. So this is a timeline template that I've handed out to everyone. Can everyone see it? Do I need to zoom in a little?
I can see it, but I have a big screen.
Okay, I'll blow it up just
I
a
don't see
little
anything
bit.
but you from the shoulders up.
Is the share screen not working for everybody?
We can stop our videos, and then I think that gives more of a screen for
Okay.
people. But yeah, I can see it. I think
I can see it.
yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
All right, so here I've set up a template, and I will show you my timeline so you can kind of see how it can go together. I'll give you an example of that later, but this is the template that you'll see, and I've set it up so that you can fill it in with the name of your story or your series. I like to begin mine with a key because I might do certain things to help indicate this in the search what the specific notes in my timeline are. So maybe you want to color code your notes or mark them with an asterisk like I do with mine. Or like, since I write historical fiction, I have a timeline that includes actual events alongside fictional events. And so I keep those two distinguished so I know what's factual and what's fictional in my stories. I usually distinguish mine through italics and asterisks, but you might want to color coordinate yours so that it stands out more. And then you can break yours down according to how your story is. Maybe your story doesn't, take place within a year or going beyond a year or several years. Maybe it's within a year or only several days. However you want to break down your timeline, do it the way it works for you. I have made an entire series timeline so that I can reference my timeline for every book in my series. And that also helps me maintain continuity. But you can kind of see how I broke it down, and you can change it up for yourselves, however works for your books. Maybe you have a story that takes place in 24 hours, like the movie or this TV series 24. So then you break it down by the hour. Lots of fun ideas there. Let's see here. So I've switched it up now. Can you see my timeline?
Yes.
All right. So at the top, it should say Tale of the Clans timeline.
Yes. Yep.
All right. I've never tried to switch mid-share before, so that was the first time. And now we know it worked. So you see, I've created a bit of an extensive key. In mine, I reference a lot of old annals, and the annals don't agree with each other on their years. So I use a lot of color coordinating to show whether there's a discrepancy in years. But you will see in my search bar, can everybody see my search bar?
I see it as well.
Okay. This is long.
Others do too.
Yeah, I cover a long period. So I have started my entire series with my oldest character, Markin, and his birth year. And I can go all the way up into the following books with other characters. So like the start of my second book in the year 962. So, and you can see that I broke it down by historical events, and then I distinguish fictional events with asterisks. So then you can see what I've done with characters. I have to break mine down by years because there's just so much. You can do whatever works for you. It's fun to have that reference. And then if you forget something, oh, I don't know when this character was born or when this character got married to so-and-so, I can go back to the year and find it.
I'd like to add that if you ever ask a freelance editor to edit your work, something like this is absolutely indispensable for an editor. They really, really need something like this. So that works really well in your favor when you hire an editor.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, and that's something that I didn't add in. Brandy could probably comment to that later if people were curious about it too, but a style sheet. And I included a lot of this stuff in a style sheet, and I can actually share a style sheet if people want to see that, but it also can include some of the information that you would have in a timeline. Okay. Let's see here. I am trying to figure out what I'm doing here. There we go. So if people want to see the style sheet later on, I can sure show that to them. But I'm gonna jump to the research resource worksheet that I gave you guys. If I can find that. There we go.
If people want to know more about style sheets too, we also did a previous session on style sheets and world building, so they could look up that YouTube video.
Awesome. Yes, definitely. Okay, so this is the writer's research resources sheet that I handed out to everybody. This thing is gold, and you can add to it whatever you need. I've covered some basics. You can add different headings. I've linked them all so that you can go to each one. So the very first one I figured is not in alphabetical order, but this is important: archives and resources. So you can see just some of the things that I've included in there, different sources where you can find books, either out of print books or current books, online libraries where you can get books for free in digital form. I've added calendar apps, copyright law, where you can go and look up things like that, private searches like DuckDuckGo, a place for creating maps. So that maybe you want a map for your story world. Here's a link here, you can go to find one. Different search engines that are more specific, like Google Scholar versus, just regular Google search. These will pull up different kinds of resources that you won't be able to find on the general search. Then here's one, the Gestor library. You can find articles for free. If you have a free account, you're limited to how many you can have for a month, but you can pull up actual articles and sources, and as well as books, and get access to those for free on this place. Old dictionaries, Project Gutenberg, yet that's another library source for you. And then I've jumped down to more specific things like agriculture and animals. Maybe you want to learn about different places or creatures for your source. Here's some about birds, the Audubon Society, American Farm Bureau, about everything you'd want to know about agriculture in America. Agriculture in Ireland, anybody curious about that? Different turf weeds in the US. You can go to colleges and find these things. Sources for art, different galleries that you can go and look. Art can inspire you both for the existing art that appealed to people in the time, or to give you a perspective of what people liked or dressed like in a certain time period. Like this site here, Watercolor World, that's showing paintings and pictures that existed prior to photography. So what people would have seen in the world before the camera was invented. It's a pretty cool site. Different fashion sources. I haven't got a lot there, but you can, of course, find them if you search online. Here's a whole section on free stock photos and image creation. So you can look up these to get yourself images. General ones like Johnnie mentioned, YouTube, Fiverr, Quora, Reddit. These are different sources that you can go to find information in general. 16 personalities for creating your characters. I am a big advocate about the Myers-Briggs personality testing. History resources. There's one that I have for Vikings. There's Historical Novel Society is a great source. They are focused on historical fiction, but they also have some great resources for historical research. Naval battles and things like that, military fighting and combat. Fight Right, there's another great source for people if they want to write fight scenes in their novels. IMDb is a great source. You need to source movies, different movies that maybe existed in your books or your time periods, or if you're writing modern ones, what's something in your setting that somebody would go and watch. Royalty-free music. There's some good sources, and some of them aren't royalty-free, but maybe you just need a playlist to inspire you. Podcasts, if you need to find podcasts for research. Podchaser is a great one just to look for podcasts in general. And Novel Marketing is another good source for that. Maybe you need science and technology sources. So here's the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, astronomical applications. That has to do with moon and stars and figuring out weather patterns for different times of the year or different years, decades. Let's see, what else? Sensory, you have to research sensory for your characters. So tastes, smells, different sources that will help you describe that. This one was an interesting one I came across. This is the site for a perfume store in the UK, but they describe all of their fragrances and senses. And I think that that's awesome that you can go there and you can use that for a character describing something they smell. Sports idioms and sports history, transportation history, religious and Christian resources for things that you're citing in your books, what you need to look back, even different Bibles, Bible studies. Word research, we know we all need this one. I have put in several different dictionaries, alt code sources. Thank you, Rhonda. She's the one who initially pointed that one out to me. Your style guides, autocrit, capitalize my title. That one's a really nice one. Cite fast to help you generate citations. Grammar Girl, online etymology, so many good things. So yeah, use this, add to it, enjoy it. Okay.
Melissa, this is great. Everyone's very, very happy.
Lots of good sources there. Okay, so then the other one that I have, I know we're getting kind of close. I don't know, 9:42 according to mine. So the other thing I had to share was character sketch template. So lending authenticity to your characters, I think, is the most important, because I know I'm partial because I like character driven stories, but I think characters that you can relate to help draw people in so fast. And so I am a big advocate of doing elaborate character sketches to really help you get to know your characters and make them real for your readers. And so I have given you a template for character creation, and you can alter it however you want. You can add to or eliminate content that is in there. This is a basic template. I even left in a little part of one of mine so you could get an idea of how to do it. I am obsessive. You know, here's Connor's, and that is a long character sketch. You will notice it extends several pages. You don't have to do all that with yours, but it's all there if you do. So I like to include different sections for the different types of characters. I have a section for protagonists. I have a section for antagonists. I have a section for secondary character cast, and then what I call tertiary characters or glorified props. So they don't get as elaborate when you go further on down, but that's you know, up to you how far you want to go in with each of your characters. So you see, I cover some basic things like their birthday. I throw in a little character summary just to remind me what the character's purpose is in the story, what's his motivation or her motivation. And so I like to have that little summary there. Some people don't need that, some like it. Some may elaborate on it more than what I've done. Birth, height, physical build, looks, sense of humor, their basic nature, their personality type, ambitions, philosophy, interests, style of dress, favorite color, what would they carry with them, what's their educational or occupational background, their friends, their enemies, their family, description of their home.
Ooh, that's good.
Characters' goals, motivations, their strongest traits, their weakest traits, how they see themselves and how others see them. These are good things to give you a perspective on your characters. What's their present problem? How will it get worse? What's the most important thing to know about the character, their deepest fears, their conflict? How will they change through the story? And then I like to conclude with these questions. Are you staying true to the character? Are the character's conflicts evident in him or her? Has an objective been met? Do the conflicts make sense in light of each new objective met? And do the objectives come to a satisfactory resolve? And I like to go over that with each character that I do in the scene to make sure that I'm staying true to them. And then after that, I've left blank ones for you where you can, if you want to, you can insert a picture of the character inspiration that you have. If there's a certain actor maybe, or a model or someone, or a picture of someone that inspires your character, you can put that in there and then you can fill it out. Have antagonistic ones. There's a slightly shorter, but still covers a lot of the basics that you would have for your main characters, because I'm a firm believer that antagonists need to be as well developed, especially if you have a focal antagonist character, needs to be just as developed as your main character. Secondary characters, a little bit smaller, but still kind of got to know the basics about them too. So here's a little fun extra. Let's see if I can figure out how I did that again.
Yeah, this is really, really great. And I like what you said about the antagonist, because remember that the antagonist believes he's the hero of the story, even if he's not.
Yes.
Right. He's the hero of his own story. But I wanted to ask you about pictures, because that's something I used to not do. And then people would ask for them and I'd have to go do it. And now I'm finding it's a really helpful thing to do. How do you, like, what kinds of search words do you put in to find your characters?
This is where I love Pinterest. Pinterest is your friend. Go to Pinterest. It's a search engine all its own. You can go in and type the physical descriptions of the characters you're looking for. Maybe you want guys with blonde hair, dark skin. Type in those features. Bam. It just shows up a whole bunch of pictures of guys that are blonde and have dark skin, or whatever you're looking for. Just type in those features on Pinterest and you will find a plethora of pictures to go through to inspire you. I bring up the picture on Pinterest and then just save it, and then copy and paste it into my Word document.
Here's another thing that you can do, and this is kind of new on in this day and age, is AI art. You can look that up, how to generate AI art. Midjourney is one of them. It's found on Discord. You can take exactly what you're looking for in a character, type it into the imagine prompt in Midjourney, and it will spit out an image of what you have typed in for what you're looking for. And then you can redo it to kind of tweak to get what you're looking for. But it is a fantastic way to get a customized idea of your character if you just can't find anything that really satisfies you. But warning, it can be a huge rabbit hole.
Sure. Because
That's
you always want to use a well-known person as my inspiration. You know, I kind of like just that regular person. So those are great ideas.
yeah, that I do both. I find like little known people and some well-known people, depending on what my own personal inspiration is. Because maybe an actual well-known person was an inspiration, or maybe I have an idea in my head of kind of what I want the character to look like, but I'm not sure. So it varies from character to character. But yeah, that research rabbit hole is definitely a trap. I know I struggle with it, and I've gotten lost many times, especially with character sketches. I am so guilty of that. I'm throwing out a little fun thing here by showing people the character sketch from my novel that just came out, Man of Sorrows. So I've had some people express to me that they would like to know how to pronounce some of the names. And I have one that's really difficult right up top there. It's Anya. That's a funny looking word. I know from our American perspective, we'd look at that and think that was Anya or something like that. But it's Anya is how you pronounce that name. Anya Indian art. And so that's some of my main characters there. Mara, Markin, skipped Markin. There's Markin and Davin. So I had to throw that in there just to please some of my readers who might be watching this replay and wanted to catch some of the pronunciation of the characters. But yeah, you can see I get pretty elaborate with all of them. I have their pictures, their names, and their completely filled out. And
Melissa did a great thing. She included a pronunciation glossary in the back of her books. And so some of your research can be turned into book extras, which is really helpful for selling your book.
Yeah. And a lot of those characters that I wasn't quite sure of, I put the pronunciations in my character sketches as well, so that I had that reference. As I still I'm learning. I definitely don't have all the pronunciations down, and I don't have a lot of Irish language under my belt. So there's a lot of pronunciations I'm still trying to figure out. And so it's nice to have those references to go back to.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I have for you guys. I hope that you find it helpful in your future endeavors with research. And
amazing. This has been amazing. The resources you shared. I think everybody's going to go copy them down. It's something we'll use. And I'm going to throw in nonfiction. You can use a lot of what you guys shared today with nonfiction, a lot.
Absolutely.
On that, I've been making some notes, and there isn't a whole bunch I would add for nonfiction. It's great on that. And again, those of you that watch the replay, or those of you that are here today, let's copy the chat. There's some extra research. I think it was Rhonda that even talked about Facebook groups, very specific Facebook groups, and it's finding experts.
That's a great resource.
Yeah.
I've depended on a lot of Facebook groups. In fact, I had one that's it was the Irish branch of the Historical Novel Society, and I was asking them about tide patterns in South Ireland, trying to figure out how far a boat would float out, at a certain time of day.
Really?
And they were giving me all sorts of wonderful resources. And most of them were people from Historical Novel Society who had been, researching similar things. And so fellow authors are a wonderful resource.
Yeah. And stuff like that. And just sometimes just asking the question. I loved how Johnnie just put it out to ask a question, and then it's amazing the input that you get on that. Well, this has been great. You guys put a lot of work into this. I am amazed and stuff. And
I went, Leslie, before we switch to something else, Leslie mentioned that her son had helped her figure out how to do, I think, Google Maps or to look at street views. And I've done that too. When I had a character walking around 1940s Manhattan, you can find those maps and those streets. It's really cool to just be able then to see what was what. And it gave me ideas on where to have her go as she's trying to, hide from somebody pursuing her. And then also for that cryptographer's dilemma, they were traveling back and forth on trains, and I put in 1940s train routes, and there again, now I did not go as far as like the timetables to make sure that they were taking them at the exact times that they may have been running, but I was able to follow the routes, and one took one route, one took another route, and who would get where first, so it's just amazing what you can find online that, I don't know how people did it before they had computers and had to do all the research.
But I think it says something about sometimes if you can, to go to the setting.
Oh,
And actually walk the streets if you can. I know Ava Maria Everson wrote one of her novels several years ago, was on one of the islands off coast of Florida, and she lives in Florida.
yeah.
And I remember her commenting, I get to spend a week there. She purposely planned a vacation, spending a week at this island. And can you imagine wow, there was all sorts of things. Now, if you had to watch your timeline there, I don't know what her timeline was on that novel, but still the idea of actually going there. So we've always said Melissa's got to go overseas.
Yeah, I have depended on people who actually live there or have visited too. So even though I couldn't get firsthand knowledge, I did ask people who had been in the area. In fact, I have some friends who actually live at the setting of the place where my stories take place, and they've been wonderful. They've given me some information. They sent me pictures. I mean, it's great. Definitely.
And if you travel, gather information and then write a story because, you've been there, you've seen it firsthand.
Yeah. So you use travel as a idea source, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Hey, while we're on recording, let's finish up. Let's talk about next week.
Ooh,
I looked, it says to come right with us. So
yeah,
and Brandy had to leave, but can you say anything about that, guys?
Not yet.
Okay.
Brandy's going to come up with a writing exercise. I think that we'll all kind of work together with it.
So it'll be a
practical,
down to earth thing next week. That sounds perfect. Well, thank you two so much, and
all the comments. Thanks, you guys.
Yeah. And we'll invite the people who can stay to stay for our after party. Anything else to wrap up?
I don't think so. I think we've covered it.
Well, thank you everybody for attending today, and if you can, stay for the after party. And thank you for watching this. I'm hoping you did watch this. the recording because it was extremely valuable, practical stuff today. It was just wonderful. Makes me actually maybe try to write fiction. Did I say that? Oh,
You all heard her and it was recorded.
Not recording.
yeah, you never know. You never know where God calls you. All right. Anything else, you guys? And we'll sign off. All right. Thank you for joining us this week. And we'll see you next week on Writers Chat.